My wife cheated on me for 5 months with her coworker. I hired a private investigator who documented everything. But my revenge wasn't what she expected. I'm 34 years old, work in sales for a tech company, and what happened a few months ago still has me processing everything. Like when something changes your life so fast that your brain can't quite catch up. I was married to Allison for almost 10 years, and if you'd asked me a year ago if I trusted her, I would have said yes without hesitating for even a second. I guess I should start at the beginning, or at least at the moment when everything started falling apart, because looking back, there were probably signs that I just didn't want to see. I met Allison when we were like 24, I think, at one of those boring work parties where everyone pretends they're having fun but really just wants to go home. She worked in human resources for another company in the same building, and I don't know, there was something about her that caught my attention from the first moment. We got married 2 years later, a small wedding, nothing fancy, just family and close friends. The first few years were good. I mean, normal. You know what I mean? We worked, went out on weekends, planned for the future. All those things people do when they're building a life together. We bought a house in the suburbs like 5 years ago, a decent place with 3 bedrooms and a yard that we never quite finished fixing up because there was always something more important to do. My job involves traveling quite a bit. Nothing excessive, but I do have to leave town like 2 or 3 times a month, usually short trips, 2 or 3 days max. Allison never complained about it. Truth be told, she was always very independent and had her own life, her own friends, her job that she really liked. I trusted her completely. Like it didn't even cross my mind that something could be happening behind my back. We were that kind of couple that others look at and think they have it all figured out, you know? But turns out you had no idea what was really going on. Everything started to change like 4 months ago, though at the time I didn't see it coming at all. I'd gone on a work trip to Chicago. I was supposed to be gone all week, but the conference I was meant to attend got canceled on the last day. Something about problems with the venue permits or I don't know what. Anyway, I decided to head home a day early. I didn't tell Allison because I thought I'd surprise her. Like show up with flowers or something, make her a romantic dinner. Those cheesy things you sometimes do when you've been married for years and want to keep the spark alive. I took an early morning flight and got home around 2 in the afternoon on a Wednesday, if I remember correctly. The thing is, when I was driving back from the airport, I stopped at a gas station that's like 10 minutes from the house to fill up the tank, and that's when I saw Allison's car, a blue 2019 Toyota Camry, parked in the parking lot of an office building right next to the gas station. It seemed weird to me because she works on the other side of town, like half an hour from there, and had no reason to be in that area on a Wednesday afternoon. I figured maybe she'd gone out to lunch with someone or had some work meeting she hadn't mentioned. I don't know. I tried not to make a big deal of it, but something in my brain held on to that image. When I got home, the house was empty, obviously, because Allison was still at work or wherever she was. I dropped off my stuff, took a shower, and around 4:30, I decided to call her to tell her I'd come back early. She answered after 3 rings, and I swear I heard surprise in her voice. Like that tone when someone doesn't expect your call and has to adjust quickly. I asked her where she was, and she said at the office that it had been a rough day and she'd be home around 7. I told her I was home and we could order something for dinner, and she said, "Perfect, see you in a bit, love you," and hung up. Something about that conversation felt off. I don't know how to explain it, but it was like she was in a hurry to end the call. I decided to go to the grocery store to buy some things to make dinner myself instead of ordering food, and when I was leaving our street, literally 2 blocks from the house, I saw Allison's Camry speeding past in the opposite direction. She didn't see me, because I was in my brother's car that he'd left at my place while he was on vacation. My car was in the shop, random detail, but important, so she had no way of knowing it was me. I followed her, basically, keeping a safe distance, and watched her pull into the parking lot of the grocery store I was heading to. I parked like 5 spaces behind her and watched her run into the store, literally running, like she was on some urgent mission. I waited a few minutes and went in too. Found her cart near the entrance and basically watched her throw random things in the cart, like she wasn't shopping for anything specific, just grabbing the first thing she saw. She went through. Checkout in less than 10 minutes, paid, and left. I bought what I needed, went back home, and like 30 minutes later she arrived with the grocery bags, gave me a kiss, asked how the trip was, and acted like nothing had happened. She didn't mention anything about leaving the office early. Nothing about being in that area where I saw her car in the morning. Just acted normal, and I decided not to say anything yet because, honestly, I wasn't sure what I'd seen or what it meant. That night we had dinner together, watched a movie on Netflix, everything super normal on the surface, but I couldn't stop thinking about the whole situation. Why had she told me she was at the office when she clearly wasn't there? Why did she rush to the grocery store like she needed to create an alibi? I started paying more attention to her patterns, her routines, and that's when I noticed things I'd previously just ignored or not given importance to. The next few weeks were weird, like Allison started, working late more often, getting home around 9 or 10 at night saying she had urgent projects or meetings that ran long. Her phone, which she used to leave everywhere without thinking twice, now she carried it with her everywhere, even to the bathroom, and kept it face down all the time. When she got messages, she'd check them but tilt the phone in a way that I couldn't see the screen, and if I got close while she was using it, she'd quickly switch apps or lock it. She started putting a password on her laptop too, something she'd never done before. And when I asked her why, she said it was for work security, that they'd asked everyone to do it. I'm not an idiot. I mean, all these things together obviously pointed to something, but part of me didn't want to believe it, you know? We'd been together almost 10 years. We'd built a life. We'd talked about having kids soon. It couldn't be possible that she was doing what my brain was telling me she was doing. I tried talking to her a couple times, like asking if everything was okay, if there was anything she wanted to tell me, and she always said everything was perfect, that she was just stressed about work, but that she loved us and everything was going to be fine. One Tuesday night, like 3 weeks after that day, I came back early. Allison told me she had to stay late at the office again, that they had an important presentation the next day, and her team needed to finish the final details. She said she'd probably get home around midnight. I told her no problem, to be careful driving back, and she left around 7:30. I waited until 9, grabbed my car keys, and drove to her office. Her car wasn't in the parking lot. I drove around the building twice to make sure, checked nearby parking lots. Nothing. She wasn't there. Something inside me broke in that moment. Honestly. All the doubts, all the suspicions, everything was confirmed in that instant. She was lying to me. She wasn't at the office. She was somewhere else doing who knows what with who knows who. I drove aimlessly for like an hour, just processing what I'd just discovered, trying to decide what to do next. I could confront her directly, but something told me that if I did without concrete evidence, she'd deny everything and find some excuse, some explanation that would sound reasonable and make me doubt myself. I decided to investigate a bit more, gather real evidence before confronting her. I felt bad doing it, honestly, like I was betraying her trust, but at the same time she'd clearly already betrayed mine, so I guess we were even. Over the next few days, I started paying attention to everything. Her schedules, her text messages, her phone calls. I noticed she talked a lot with someone named Chris, a name she'd mentioned before casually as a coworker. But now it seemed like they talked all the time. When I asked who she was texting, she always said her sister Danielle or some friend, but I'd seen Chris's name on the screen more than once. That Friday, Allison told me she was going out with some girlfriends after work, that she'd be home late, not to wait up for her. I said, "Perfect, have fun," and as soon as she left the house, I followed her. I kept my distance, like 4 or 5 cars behind her, and watched her drive not toward downtown where she usually went out with her friends, but toward a residential neighborhood on the east side. I followed her for like 20 minutes until she turned onto a quiet street with nice houses, those with big yards and trees in front, and she parked in front of a 2-story house with a black Jeep Wrangler in the driveway. I parked like half a block ahead, far enough not to be obvious but close enough to see what was happening. Allison got out of the car, walked to the door, and before she could ring the bell, the door opened and a guy came out. Tall, athletic build, brown hair, around our age. They immediately hugged. Not a friend hug. Like one of those hugs that lasts too long and is too intimate, and then he took her hand and they went into the house together. The door closed and I sat there in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white, trying to process what I'd just seen. I don't know how long I stayed there. Honestly, maybe an hour, maybe two. I completely lost track of time. All kinds of thoughts went through my head. How long had this been going on? How many times had she been here before? Did he love her? Did she love him? Had our relationship been a lie this whole time? I took out my phone and took pictures of her car parked in front of the house, of the Jeep in the driveway, of the house itself. I looked up the address on Google and found out the house belonged to someone named Christopher Miller. And when I searched that name on LinkedIn, I found his profile. He worked at the same company as Allison, in the finance department. Chris. It was Chris from work, the one she always mentioned casually, who, according to her, was just another coworker. I went back home and waited. Allison arrived around 1 in the morning, smelling like men's cologne and with slightly messy hair. She told me she'd had a good time with the girls, that they'd gone to a new bar downtown, that she'd had a bit to drink, so an Uber had brought her back another lie. I'd seen her car parked in front of my house when I arrived. I told her I was glad she'd had fun and went to the guest room, saying I wasn't feeling well and didn't want to get her sick. She seemed relieved, honestly, probably because it meant we wouldn't have to share a bed that night. The next few days were a nightmare, basically. I kept watching her, kept taking pictures, kept gathering evidence. I saw her go to that house 3 more times that week, always with a different excuse. Working late, dinner with girlfriends, yoga class she'd supposedly started taking. Each lie added to the previous ones, building a mountain of betrayal I couldn't keep ignoring. I also discovered that Chris had public Instagram and Facebook accounts, and I could see photos of him and his life, confirming he was the same person I'd seen with Allison. The following Tuesday, I decided I'd had enough. I couldn't keep living in that lie. Couldn't keep pretending I didn't know what was happening. Couldn't keep sleeping under the same roof as someone who'd betrayed me so completely. When Allison got home that day, around 6 in the evening, because apparently she'd actually been at the office that day, she found me sitting in the living room with my laptop open, showing all the photos I'd taken, all the dates and times I'd documented, everything organized in a folder labeled Evidence. She froze in the doorway, keys still in her hand, and I watched her face go through like 5 different emotions in a matter of seconds: confusion, fear, guilt, panic, and finally resignation. She asked me what all that was, and I simply said, "Are you really going to pretend you don't know?" I think we stood there staring at each other for what felt like an eternity, neither of us wanting to be the first to speak. But finally she dropped her bag on the floor and said, "Ryan, I can explain." I told her to go ahead, that she had my full attention, and she started with all the typical BS that people say when they get caught doing something like this. That it hadn't been her intention, that it just happened, that Chris and she had connected as friends first and things had developed from there, that she still loved me, that I was her husband and that wasn't going to change, that it had been a terrible mistake and she was so sorry. I asked her how long it had been going on, and she said, like 4 months, maybe 5, that she wasn't sure. 4 or 5 months. Can you believe it? Almost half a year of lies, of deception, of making me feel like an idiot every time I believed her when she said she was working late or going out with girlfriends. I asked her if she loved him and she went quiet, which basically gave me my answer. I asked if they'd been in our bed and she shook her head, saying it had always been at his place, as if that made it better somehow, as if the place where she'd betrayed me made any difference. I asked if she was planning to leave me for him and she started crying, saying no, that she'd never wanted to hurt me, that I was her husband and she wanted us to work, that she was willing to do whatever it took to fix things. I stood there, listening to her cry and beg, and the thing is, I felt nothing, literally nothing. I didn't feel like comforting her, didn't feel sorry for her, didn't feel the urge to tell her everything was going to be okay. I just felt this huge emptiness in my chest, like something fundamental inside me had been permanently switched off. I told her it was over, that I didn't want to try to fix this, that there was nothing to fix, because what we had was dead. It had died the moment she decided to sleep with another man while still using my last name and sleeping in my house. She got hysterical, basically, falling to her knees and grabbing my legs, begging me to reconsider, that we should go to couples therapy, that she'd give me a chance to regain my trust, that she'd end everything with Chris immediately and never speak to him again. All the desperate promises someone makes when they realize they really lost something important. but I'd already made my decision during all those days I'd spent watching her, gathering evidence, processing the betrayal. There was no going back for me. Not after this. I pulled away from her grip, went to our room. Well, what had been our room, and started taking my clothes out of the closet and putting them in a suitcase. She followed me, still crying, still begging, but I just kept packing without saying anything. I called my friend Dylan and asked if I could stay at his place for a while. He said yes without asking questions, probably because he heard something in my voice that told him it wasn't the time to ask. I finished packing 2 suitcases with the essentials, grabbed my laptop and some important documents, and left. Allison tried to block the door, saying I couldn't leave her like this, that we needed to talk more, that this couldn't be happening, but I just told her to move, and eventually she did. I walked out of the house, got in my car, and drove to Dylan's place without looking back even once. My phone started ringing like crazy as soon as I left the driveway, Allison calling over and over, but I didn't answer any of the calls. Dylan greeted me with a beer and a hug, and I finally broke down. Honestly, I cried for the first time since all this had started. Cried for the relationship I'd lost, for the years I'd wasted, for the future I'd planned that was now never going to happen. Dylan didn't try to give me advice or tell me what to do, just sat there with me while I processed everything, and honestly, that was exactly what I needed in that moment. The next few days were a complete blur. Allison wouldn't stop calling and texting, dozens of messages, alternating between apologies, pleas, and eventually anger when she realized I really wasn't going to respond. I blocked her number after the second day because I just couldn't deal with it. But she found other ways to contact me, calling from friends' phones, sending emails. She even showed up at Dylan's office once, but he told her I wasn't there, and not to come back. Her sister Danielle, who I'd always liked honestly, called me like a week after I left, trying to mediate, saying Allison was devastated, that she really regretted it, that we all make mistakes, and the marriage was worth saving. I told Danielle I appreciated the call, but my decision was made. That there was no way back from this. That trust once broken can't just be glued back together like nothing happened. She understood, I think, or at least stopped insisting after that conversation. I hired a lawyer, a good one that a coworker who'd gone through a divorce a few years ago had recommended, and started the legal process. The hard part was dividing everything: the house, the cars, the bank accounts, all the things we'd accumulated together over almost 10 years. My lawyer told me the process could take several months, maybe up to a year, depending on how cooperative Allison was, but that we had a strong case, especially with all the evidence I'd gathered. I went back to the house with Dylan and a friend of his to pick up the rest of my stuff like 2 weeks later. Allison wasn't there. I'd arranged with her sister for her to be there instead, to make sure everything went smoothly. It was weird, honestly, walking through that house that had been my home for 5 years, knowing I'd never be back, seeing all the photos on the walls of us smiling on vacations, at our wedding, at birthdays and anniversaries, all those memories that now felt tainted by the betrayal. I packed everything that was mine: books, clothes, some furniture I'd bought before getting married, my exercise equipment, my gaming console that I hadn't used in years, all those little things that make up a life. Danielle helped me, honestly, carrying boxes and making the process less painful than it could have been. Before I left, she gave me a hug and told me she was so sorry about everything that had happened, that I didn't deserve that, and she understood my decision. I thanked her for being civil in the middle of all this chaos and left. The following months were about adjustment. Basically, I stayed at Dylan's apartment for a month before finding my own place. A small, one-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. Nothing fancy, but it was mine, and that was what mattered. I blocked Allison on all social media, on my phone, on my email, everywhere she could contact me, because I knew if I gave her even a small opening, she'd take it and try to convince me to reconsider. I went back to focusing on my work, on my hobbies I'd neglected during the marriage, on reconnecting with friends I hadn't seen in months or years. I started going to the gym regularly, cooking decent meals for myself, building a routine that didn't involve anyone else. It wasn't easy. Honestly, there were nights where I'd sit in my empty apartment wondering if I'd made the right decision, if I should have given her a second chance, if maybe we could have gotten through this together. But then I'd remember the lies, The times she'd looked me in the eyes and told me she was at work when she was really with Chris, and I knew there was no going back. Like 3 months after I left, Allison called me from an unknown number, managed to get past my blocks, and I made the mistake of answering before realizing who it was. She said we needed to talk about the house, that her lawyer had told her we needed to make a decision about whether to sell it or if one of us would keep it by paying the other their share. Her voice sounded tired, different, without the desperation it had at the beginning, but also without the warmth it used to have when she talked to me. I told her I thought it was fine to sell it, that it didn't make sense for either of us to keep it given what it represented now, and she agreed. We ended that call in less than 5 minutes. Pure, practical, and logistical conversation, nothing personal, nothing emotional. The divorce process was finalized like 6 months after I left the house. Relatively quick, according to my lawyer, especially considering we had property and accounts to divide. Allison didn't fight for anything. Honestly, she accepted the division of assets my lawyer proposed, signed all the papers without drama, and that was it. Almost 10 years of marriage reduced to a signature on some legal documents and an equitable division of our material possessions. I didn't speak to her again after that call about the house. The house sold like 2 months after the document. Divorce was finalized, we got a good price for it, and each of us got our share. I don't know what she did with the money. Probably bought another place or moved in with Chris. Since I guess they're still together, though honestly I don't know and don't care to know. I used my share for the deposit on a bigger apartment, 2 bedrooms this time, with a balcony and a view of a park, a place where I could really start over without any connection to my previous life. Now I'm in a better place, mentally speaking. I don't think about Allison every day like I did at the beginning. I don't feel that rage I felt every time I remembered her betrayal. I guess I've found something close to peace with everything that happened, or at least acceptance that some things just aren't meant to last no matter how much time or effort you've dedicated to them. I've gone out with some people since then. Nothing serious yet because, frankly, I'm not ready to trust someone at that level again. But that's okay. I'm not in a hurry. Last week I ran into Danielle at the grocery store, pure coincidence, and we chatted for a few minutes. She asked how I was, and I told her the truth, that I was good, better than I'd been in a long time. She told me, Allison asks about me sometimes, but she doesn't tell her anything because she respects my privacy and my decision to move forward. I thanked her for that, and we said goodbye amicably. It was weird, honestly, but it was also confirmation that I'd made the right decision, that moving forward without Allison was exactly what I needed to do. Sometimes I still think about what our life would have been like if she hadn't done what she did, if we'd had the kids we planned to have, if we'd grown old together like we said we would. But then I remind myself that life would have been built on lies and betrayal, and that's not the kind of life I want for myself. I deserve better than that. I deserve someone who values me enough not to destroy what we have for a 5-month affair with a coworker. And someday, when I'm ready, I'll find that. But for now, I'm okay alone, rebuilding my life my way and on my own terms.